Welcome back for episode 2 of the Mavpuckcast. I am Jon, along with
Jason. So, Jon, start with the two, say, new Mavs, right?
Right. The Mavericks signed they didn't sign 2 new recruits. They got verbal commitments from 2 new recruits this week. And they're
Both Canadian.
Both players out of the Canadian junior ranks. One is Alex Roy. I think it's pronounced Roy. Maybe it's like Patrick Waugh from your Colorado Avalanche. I don't know for sure. Big kid, 6'6", 210 defenseman from up there. Sounds like maybe he knew Mike Gabinet. In one of the articles that I read about him, plays for the Jamestown Rebels of the North American Hockey League. And interesting tidbit, former Mav Billy Puglisi does scouting for that.
He does. So the second one, Brandon, we call him Scallon, I believe.
I was going to say Scanlon, maybe? Yeah.
And he's in AJHL.
Yes.
Another defenseman, 6'3".
Correct. Plays for the Brooks Bandits, which I'm very excited. I think this is the first player with my last name being Brooks. I'm excited to have a player from that team.
It's a sign.
Yeah, exactly. It sounds like he's a good offensive defenseman for the team. So 2 kind of big defensemen out of the Canadian junior ranks. What do you think?
There's a hockey prospect site out of Canada that has a lot of player rankings and tracking of the Canadian kids and stuff. I found that just tells about where they've been, what they've done, and their trajectory and things like that. And it's amazing how far it goes back. Like, it goes back to like almost Pee-wee on some of these kids and stuff. And so it was fairly interesting to see what they were saying about these kids. I think with both recruits, they talked about potential,
right,
and expectations. And I guess that kind of scares me just a little bit in the sense of, we're not talking about what they're capable of doing right now. We're talking about, like, there's a huge upside to these kids. And I'm like, yeah, but that depends a lot on who can develop that upside when they actually get here.
Exactly. I mean, and how they're going to fit in with the guys who are on the roster when they're playing here. I mean, I think that's a big thing with these recruits. And I don't know, maybe they're looking that these guys are going to be role players. I mean, maybe they'll be breakout players. We're talking about defensemen, so...
Yeah, you don't typically look for a lot of role-playing defensemen. I mean,
right.
You usually look for what we call system players.
Right.
You're either going to play, if you're going to play a fast transition type of game, you want puck-moving, fast-skating defensemen. If you play more of like Western Michigan played for a long time, Michigan played for a long time, the old school North Dakota before Dean Blaze, that lockdown style, you're looking for big defensemen, guys that have a lot of weight on their skates. So not necessarily like the 6'6", 210. You're looking more like the 6 foot 225.
Right. The bigger guys. Yeah.
The former linebacker. Like,
yeah, exactly.
I couldn't cut it playing football, so I want to go knock some guys around.
They could
put
people
hockey
into the boards. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. They play that clamp down style, and so I think the one thing that stood out to me is that you've got 2 defensemen that I don't look at them being necessarily the same system type of guys. Like, it seems to me like one fits better into that more like lockdown defense, and one fits better more into that.
Absolutely, yeah. Scanlon would be the puck moving guy, and Roy would be the
And so it'll be interesting to see how that works, because sometimes, at least if you look at like NHL as an example, there are teams that have been successful having. A lot of times it's a right side defenseman that can move the puck and a left side defenseman that can play a little bit more lockdown, battle in front of the net, move people around, those types of things. And so, yeah, it will be quite interesting to see how they mix and how they play together.
Right. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what they do when they come next season. So, I don't know how they'll fit in, but I'm sure that our coaching staff has a plan for them. So
yeah, I mean, he wouldn't have sought the recruits if he didn't feel like he had a place for them or a role that they could play, something that they could do for the team. So it's it'll be interesting to see what coach has planned for them next year, because
Absolutely.
both of them are 1920.
Yeah, and I think one of the guys, it's his last year of eligibility for juniors, so they're a little bit
Roy, yeah.
older
Yeah, and
players
so
too.
that, I think that helps, because I
Yeah,
like the fact that they're going to be
guys that are
a
a little
little
bit
bit
more
more mature.
mature.
Right,
Yeah,
right,
yeah. I mean,
exactly.
sometimes there's a drawback to that because sometimes the younger guys are the more sought after recruits. But I think in this instance, it's good to have some guys with some experience back there on the blue line. So
Yeah, and these are guys that you don't really anticipate seeing them on an NHL draft roster next summer or anything like that.
exactly.
Mostly because of their age. So these are guys that might follow a semi different path, kind of,
Yeah.
if they're going to make that jump to the next level. And I think it was Scanlon that talked about in his interview with CanadianProspects.com about what his reasoning for coming to UNO was, and talking about wanting to develop and take the next step, and how college hockey was kind of seen as that way for him. So it's nice that he's at least looking at it
So an
that way.
opportunity to kind of prove himself, like a lot of Mavericks have done over the years, prove himself at UNO and kind of make himself attractive to
And for a lot
NHL
of those
players.
Canadian kids, I mean, unless you're top end talent,
Right.
or playing in Toronto, Montreal
Yeah.
kind of demographic area, right? Like,
Right.
you're not going to have the scouts out there. So coming down to college in the States, it's a lot easier for
Hmm.
an NHL scout to hit. He could probably hit
Oh
two,
yeah.
3 games in a weekend.
Yep.
So
Absolutely.
yeah,
On that topic, Mike Gabinetz was on 590 AM this week. He was talking about the team, about the exhibition game that you and I just watched.
right.
And speaking of exhibition games, he also was saying that maybe he would like to see college hockey teams have an opportunity to play more exhibition games, more preseason games, to be able to evaluate the players prior to the start of the season. And I think his thinking was when you're in a conference like the NCHC and playing just NCAA teams in general, those pairwise rankings are so important, and those games at the beginning of the season can come back to either help you at the end or come back to bite you at the end. And I think he's thinking, I want a chance to be able to look at these guys, see how they fit together, see what kind of lines I want to have. What do you think about
I
having an extended exhibition season?
I agree with the concept of it. I certainly see where coach is coming from.
Right.
You do not get the same look at these kids a in a practice or in an inter squad match or anything like that.
Sure.
We've talked about it, off the podcast, but you get a split squad type of scrimmage, and these guys, you're trying to get them to bond, you're trying to get them to gel as a group,
Right.
and find some common bonds within them, and then you ask them to hit each other.
Now, exactly. I would love it because they, in the early years of the program, they had this, and I would love to see it again as a fan. But from that perspective, it's not really a good way to evaluate your team. So
Right.
it's an opportunity for the guys to get out there and get some ice time. But it is an interesting concept, and I know you were talking, potentially you brought up the Maverick Stampede, and this is something that I remember very well from the early years because I was
Right.
involved on the Maverick Stampede committee. It was a great early season tournament that the Mavs did, bringing in three other NCAA teams to play in that. And you had suggested an idea: do it as a preseason tournament. You would have UNO bring in a couple of Canadian teams,
Right.
and then one other college team.
Right.
And the game against the college team wouldn't count in the standings, in the pairwise, anything else. It would be considered a preseason matchup.
But it would be a current Division 1 team.
Exactly. One of the teams that we either might be playing, or maybe a team that we wouldn't be playing that season, but a chance to get kind of that good game experience against the type of competition that we're going to be facing during the season.
And I think it would be helpful to do a team that we don't get to see very often.
Right, like an ECAC type team or a Hockey
Atlantic
East team.
Hockey,
Atlantic
yeah.
Hockey, yeah.
Those types of, yeah. I mean, you get one of those clubs that they're looking for the same thing. They're also looking to evaluate their team and their players, and to some degree their staff.
Right.
and how their coaching staff coaches and how the training staff handles game situations. So I think it could be nice if you could convince the NCAA to say, look, give us a game against a D1 team that we cannot count the first game, every season if you want it. I think you'd see a lot of these teams that don't have to deal with. I look at teams like Minnesota and Michigan that have a little bit more. They don't have as much freedom with their scheduling because of all of the activities that happen on that campus in the fall.
Right.
And they're competing with, football. They're competing with these other large sports in the fall. And so to say, look, just come here, come to little old Omaha, and we'll guarantee you a Sunday game. You'll play against us. We both get a chance to, play quote unquote D1 real level hockey.
Right.
And we both get 2 games of warm up against some Canadian team. And I think you look at those Canadian teams and they get the opportunity. I know there's some that have done this where they've gone and played kind of a home and home like what we just saw with Manitoba, where they did North Dakota and then came to here, where you'd have a team. They used to do this, but in Denver, we saw them with Colorado College back when they used to have more quote unquote preseason games if they were not Division 1 or Division 3. And so they'd bring in 2 Canadian teams and they'd play one would play Friday night in Denver, one would play Friday night in Colorado Springs, and then they'd swap.
Sure, exactly, because those teams are in close proximity. And I think
travel cost is the same, right?
And if I recall correctly, there might have been one year with the Stampede where they weren't able to get one of the teams, so they might have had Manitoba be one of the participants in that 4-team thing.
Right.
And so you could potentially do that. Now, I will say as a fan, I don't yearn to watch more games against Canadian college high. I mean, the idea, because like you and I were talking about, Coach Kemp at one time had the idea of pushing the season, essentially back a month, where you would start it like in early to mid-November instead of October. That creates a lot of issues at the end as far as venues for the Frozen Four and that type of thing.
Right.
So yeah, I don't really yearn to have a thing where you play like 2 weekends against Canadian teams, and I'm sure that the folks at Baxter Arena that are in charge of the program don't relish the idea of 2 Canadian exhibitions. But your idea,
but if it's in one weekend, I think it's an easy.
Yeah, I think if you do that in one weekend, and I think it's kind of an interesting concept having NCAA team participate in that as an exhibition type game. I don't know if people would like that. I think the fans might like that. I don't know if the other NCAA schools would go along with that, but I like the idea, and I like that thinking. So it'll be interesting to see if they ever do anything like that. I don't know if it'll happen or not, but I do understand where Mike Gabinette's coming from. He's like, we just basically jump right into the season.
Right. You get one opportunity to see guys. You can only play them so much in that game. You play a larger roster, so your guys that are averaging, say, 15, 18 minutes are probably only going to get 12 in that exhibition game. And so it's like you get some evaluation, but not a ton.
Right. And I guess I'm trying to remember, there was a season recently, right, where we didn't play our exhibition till like January, wasn't it? Wasn't that within the last couple of years at Baxter Arena?
Was that at Baxter?
I'm trying to remember. We played, I think maybe it was Lethbridge or something, kind of right after the first of the year, because maybe we didn't. I'm trying to remember. I think we opened Baxter Arena just with Air Force. I don't think we had an exhibition game before.
Correct.
That.
We did not have an exhibition,
Okay.
but that, I think, that dealt more with the
arena opening. That was kind of it was a weird circumstance, but that was a season where you just kind of jumped right into the season. So,
and we talked about the issue with with Gabinette's desire to have more of a preseason is what's your draw, because there's a cost to putting these things on, to having these kinds of things, and unless you're going to go to some format where you're going to play Manitoba at Grover Ice Rink or something.
or play them in the practice rink. Just have them. Yeah, exactly. Just get a practice in with them as they're driving through on the way to Denver or North Dakota or wherever it happens to be.
I mean, but even there's a cost associated with all those types of things. So it's like, how do you turn that around and fund that?
Exactly.
And that's where I think the tournament idea for me is that the draw really is that Sunday night game. You get to see UNO
Against
play
the
something
NCAA,
else.
against a potential marquee type, like an
Right.
Ohio State or Michigan or something like that. It's kind of
Yeah.
it's an interesting concept. I like that. So maybe we'll have to send that to the coach and see what he thinks about that.
Or maybe we'll get lucky enough that he's actually listening, right?
We can
can
only
only
hope.
hope.
Yeah.
So I think that's a proper lead into what we thought about tonight's exhibition game against Manitoba. So why don't you talk about what your thoughts were on what you saw
Well,
tonight?
it's always hard to glean a lot from an exhibition game. But I think the biggest takeaway that I had was those young players, those freshman players coming in, look like they have a lot of potential for this team. In particular, Tyler Weiss. I mean, he
Yeah.
looked good. He looked really good. And I know some people were saying he's kind of small in stature. He needs to put
He
some
is.
weight on. And he will.
does.
He will, yeah. It's feed him
Yeah.
some steak here. But I got to tell you, I got to tell you, that fourth goal that he scored was a beautiful goal.
Oh, yeah, the dangle through the defenseman and pop it over his blocker into the corner. That was well, and even I think the plays, Gabnett talks about this every once in a while. I don't know if he talked about this on the radio show or not, but he talks about making plays when you don't have the puck. And Tyler's one of those classic kids, from what I've seen, that everyone knows what he can do with the puck.
Right.
The question I think for him is always like, is he prepared? Is he willing to do the things that he needs to do away from the puck?
Exactly.
And I was very impressed with how he recognized lanes and filled some of the lanes. That led to turnovers. He had a really good one where he cut off maybe 15, 20-foot pass right at the blue line and was able to kind of dangle that through a forward's legs and give us a great scoring opportunity just off that quick turnover right at the blue line. So I think that more of that stuff, I do think his size is going to come into question when we start playing
the
Denver and
NCAA.
North
That's
Dakota
what we're
and stuff.
talking about. He did great against Manitoba,
Right.
But how will it be when he's getting pounded by North Dakota, Denver, St. Cloud, etc.? But it'll be interesting to see, and they'll. I think he'll be fine.
Primo was the other one.
That was I loved Primo. That's what I was saying after the game. He's a big kid. He's got size, and obviously, people always focus on the goals. But there was something about, he had a real presence there in the offensive zone. I thought he was just a really intriguing player to watch tonight.
Right.
He looked really good. I just think he's going to be good as the season progresses.
Yeah, I agree. I think a lot of those freshmen, even some, I think the other thing that stood out to me was even some of those returning sophomore players.
Right.
Cole Pickup.
Yeah, Cole Pickup had a big game. He was all over the ice tonight.
Last year when we saw him early on, I was excited about him because I read all the stuff coming in. I'm like, this guy's got some talent, and it'll be nice to see that on display. I thought he'd gel well with some of the guys that some of the seniors that we left. I thought he'd be a good pairing for some of them. And it didn't seem like it panned out. I think the first game I had said afterwards that he seemed kind of lost a little bit in where he should be and what he should be doing and all those types of things. And that wasn't the case tonight.
No, he saw a lot of ice time tonight, which I'm really glad about. He's a player that I was excited about like you last year, and we didn't get to see him in the lineup a lot. So I think, again, you've got guys depart, and I think he'll become a bigger factor for the team this season. I really do. And again, he was all over the ice. He was hustling. He was moving. And I thought the team moved really well tonight. I thought there was a lot of space. Obviously, when you're playing a team that's played in however many games that they played, and they had to bus out of North Dakota last night. So this was probably a tired team on the ice, but I thought he looked really good. But
I think there's still, last podcast we talked a little bit about like chemistry on the ice and how you need to kind of find that. I liked that Gabnett kind of experimented with a lot of the guys. Like, let's throw these two out there on the wings with this center, then let's switch the center up on him and see if we can find a combination that just seems to really click. I thought first period, we were fighting the puck a lot. I thought we struggled to hit our passes very well. We still struggled in the third with hitting our passes.
Right. That's yeah.
And I think that's something they need to work on. I assume they will work
Right.
on. But I mean, you can make. We always say when you play some of these teams like Manitoba and that stuff,
Right.
you can afford to make those kinds of mistakes.
You can.
North Dakota, Denver, St. Cloud are going to put that in the back of your net.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
You know, when you mess up the outlet pass to a forward that's on your own blue line,
Exactly.
that's going to turn around and be in the back of your net
Oh,
probably
yeah.
6 out of 10 times.
Yeah, exactly right. So, yeah, it'll be very interesting to see. It was the other thing that was interesting is that sometimes during these exhibition games, when you look at the guy between the pipes, sometimes they'll do a goalie each period. Well, here they did Wenninger half the game, and they did Tomek half the game.
Right, and Tomek looked good.
I thought he
was pretty solid. Yeah. The goal that he let in was 4-on-3, which is always an odd way to defend a penalty kill, especially in an exhibition. It's like, what are we gonna do?
Yeah, it is Manitoba.
You may not practice it at all.
Yeah, Manitoba. The last 2 nights, they find a way to score like right at the end of the game, which is kind of interesting with that team. I thought he looked good. Obviously, he didn't. Neither goaltender faced a lot.
Nope.
Tonight, it wasn't like.
But they were quality stuff. They may not have been a lot of pucks on net, but there were some quality scoring chances. Yeah. And I know Evan, when it was 0-0, made a couple really good saves.
He really did.
You let one of those in, and who knows? A lot of times in a game like this, it becomes, we should be beating these guys, so let's try to do everything ourselves, and they lose track of the system. And there's a lot of things that can happen when you get a team that you're supposed to beat that suddenly gets that first goal.
Yeah, we saw that. I mean, yeah, absolutely. We saw that last night with Manitoba playing North Dakota. We saw it in the exhibition that Denver played last night against Canadian School. I think they played University of Alberta last night. So, so you never know.
Even Minnesota versus Duluth. I mean, Duluth was a different team when Minnesota went up 1-0.
Absolutely, yeah.
And I think they were lucky to get out of there with a tie in that game, but they are going to get smoked if that's a sign of things to come. Like, Duluth needs to figure that stuff out because they can't get down just because it's a goal, especially a goal in the first period.
Yeah, you can't have those mental breakdowns, especially if my prediction last week is, to hold true that they're going to repeat as national champs.
I think my pick for St. Cloud's looking better.
Exactly right. Yeah, I know. Yeah, but it'll be interesting to see. I think overall, I thought that there were some promising aspects to the Mavs tonight. I thought particularly the freshmen, I thought they looked good.
So what'll be interesting is our roster tonight is more than what our roster can be on Friday.
Yeah.
And so who do you think is going to get scratched? Do you think it's determined already? Or do you think it's, let's see how practice goes this week?
I think it may be how practice goes this week. It'll be interesting to see. The question is, do you think the starting lineup will be a bunch of returning favorites? Or do you think we're going to see somebody like Tyler Weiss in that starting lineup on Friday night?
I don't expect that we'll see him start the game, but I think
he'll be in the game.
Weiss and Primo are two that I see, unless something goes crazy during practice. They're two that I suspect will be on the team.
I would imagine they will be too.
Taylor Ward was the other one.
Yeah.
I thought, he was in the play a lot. I don't know. I don't get the feeling from this preseason game that we'll see him score a ton of goals.
Right.
But ironically, I see him kind of being a little bit of like the guy who just left wearing his number with no guard. So I think that'll be a little
more of a gritty guy.
Kind of we talked about role players. Like he seems like kind of one of those guys. He might get a few, especially if they had him for a while with Tyler, with Weiss out there, and that was an interesting combo because he was crashing the net pretty well when Tyler was out there, and Tyler seems pretty good about, having that vision. We saw it at the U.S. Under-18 team that he's on. He'll find you if you know where to go. So,
Kevin Conley.
Conley looked pretty good. I expected a little bit more out of him, but he looked good enough that I think he's got a chance.
Yeah.
I'm going through the roster, seeing because there were a couple that I was like, I just don't. Were they scratched or, sometimes it's
Right,
one of those like
exactly.
I
I
just
wasn't
didn't see
sure
them.
either. Yeah, did I just
So there was
Travis Cothenbutel?
that was one that I was like, was he?
He was there. I actually, yeah,
I think
I
he
was
played.
keyed in on him because Gabinet had mentioned him on the radio show on 590 as somebody who had shown a lot of promise in some of their workouts here. So,
Kopecki was another one that I don't remember. And
right,
sometimes, depending on what their style play is, sometimes that's
yeah,
okay. What Gabnet needs, maybe they don't need that, draw some
absolutely,
attention
yeah.
away from a guy type of thing. Smallage was one.
Jason Smallage.
What did you think of him?
Well, he was out there. I mean, I didn't, obviously you're, if you're me, you're focused a lot on the forward, so you're not
Mm-hmm.
as much focused on the defenseman. But I think he'll be a good player on the team. I'm excited about those. And another guy that I really liked that I did notice tonight was John Schultz
Mm-hmm.
playing defense. I think he'll be a really good defenseman for the team this year. So I think both of those guys have a lot of promise. It's always hard to tell. Like I said, it's always hard to tell in an exhibition what you've got. But both of those guys, I think, will be.
I think they have a future.
Yeah.
I felt Schultz probably did a little bit better job.
Yeah.
Smallage, I thought he was a little out of position on a lot of things. There were
Okay.
some defensive plays where I just personally as a fan did not like kind of where he was looking and where he was hanging out. And so I think he's he deserves probably another year in practice with the team, learning the system, learning kind
Right.
of, maybe play him in some games here and there. I think he's certainly one that you have to, if you're a starting defenseman, I'll throw Bukta out there. Not like I'm against him or anything, but like if you're Bukta and you're thinking my job's safe, this is the kind of kid that
absolutely
says
not.
your
Yeah,
job's
yeah, yeah.
not safe.
Yeah. And the thing we have to remember too is this is their first significant game action, so the guys looking a little bit out of sync is not necessarily unusual. You know
Right.
what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I mean, so
They're rusty. I would say as
Yeah.
a team, there were, we talked about the passes at the beginning and stuff. There was a lot of rust to work off.
we were
of
not.
this
Yeah,
team,
we were
but
not seeing tape to tape passes.
Yeah.
So
yeah, there was a lot of that chippy kind of stuff, and yeah, I think they'll iron it out over the course of the season. The well, like we talked about with the whole Gabinet thing, the problem is the season starts. You don't have a whole lot of
Exactly.
time to work that off.
well, and you're dealing with a head coach, and I understand his kind of frustration with that. It's you're dealing with a guy who this is his first recruiting class coming in. You know, by all accounts, the assistants were kind of hamstrung during the season when Gabinet was assistant as far as recruiting went.
Hmm.
And so you're trying to evaluate a lot of guys very quickly, and you've got a lot of new guys on the roster. Granted, you have 10 seniors on the roster, but you've got a lot of new players on the roster. So it'll be interesting to see where they end up meshing into this roster and what kind of combinations end up working best
Yeah.
for the team.
And we'll see what Gabinet decides to do. They talk about it at the NHL level about not rushing a player up through
Right.
ECHL, AHL kind of levels, and so it'll be interesting to see who he thinks maybe there's players out there, especially on D. A lot of times I see this more so where you're close, you're good, you're going to be good for multiple years to come. But now's not the time to put you in a roster where you risk them losing confidence.
Right.
Because some of these kids, you see kids going to college and stuff, and they falter, and it's not a talent thing. It's not a skill
Right.
set thing. It's
Yeah.
they made some mistakes and they got beat early, and now their confidence is shot, and they don't think they can do what they know they should.
Absolutely.
We all
I mean,
know
I
they
think,
can.
many years ago, a goaltender like
Goalies, yeah.
Jeremy Dupont for UNO. I think, I know that his dad wanted him to go play college early, and I really think he would have benefited from more time playing in the junior
Lower
ranks.
levels, yeah.
Yeah, I think they almost brought him in too soon, and I think it ultimately it stunted his career with UNO, and I think it you
It
know,
can. It happens, I'd say, every year. You could go through NHL rosters and find
yeah,
kids that were moved up too early.
yeah.
And, I was in Colorado for the opening of the NHL season and got a chance.
That sounded like a
I
fun
had
little trip you had.
it was an awesome trip.
Yeah, I'm
Uh,
kind of envious of that. So
we had an opportunity to see the Avalanche play on Thursday, and then we had gone up the road to see their AHL team, the Colorado Eagles, play
very cool.
on Friday. And it's interesting to see, for me at least, to see the talent and skill set things, but. Coming out of being a huge Avs fan and following that stuff, everyone's talking about Martin Cott and what that kid can do and how I saw like two people on NHL.com say he's a shoo-in to make the Avs roster, and then to see him play for Colorado, and then watching him play, going, yeah, this kid just like, it's a different speed thing, it's a different game coming from Europe to the United
Right.
States, and I think the Avs saw that and said he has the talent to play in the NHL, but if we push him too early, he's going to start second guessing himself. And so to put him down in the AHL where he gets a chance to kind of get his feet wet kind of scenario.
Absolutely, yeah.
And I think the same thing can be said for what you look at with some of these freshman players, is they may have this skill set, but maybe they don't gel well, or maybe Yabnet's looking at his recruiting class coming in saying, he works better with this guy, and if I give him too much time now, there may be conflicts with that chemistry later on. So sometimes you hold them back, saying, "Look,
it's always a delicate balance, because
right.
sometimes if they hold them back, then sometimes you can have kind of those emotional issues with a player where they don't feel like they're being played enough. Some players, it can actually motivate them to do better and to improve, to kind of earn their way into more playing time, into
Right.
that starting lineup. It's a delicate balance, and I would not want to be a coach trying to figure that out, because it's not an envious position to be in.
Absolutely.
We've seen that many times where a player doesn't feel like they're getting a fair shake or getting their due, and so it'll be very interesting to see with some of these guys. I don't know, but we did get to see a number of them a lot, and like you said, I liked Tyler Weiss, I like Chase Primo. We're both probably, I would say, the two freshmen that really stood out to me tonight.
I think so. Yeah. So, hey, before we sign off on this one, there was one thing that I wanted to bring up about the exhibition game and get your take on. Throw this out from left field here. The energy in that building was like an unfilled balloon. I mean, it was just, and I don't know if I'm just, we talked about my trip to Colorado. I may be a little bit on the like high side of things, not to like, no pun intended on Caro high side thing.
Well, I was going to say, were you there for opening night? Was that opening night for the Avalanche?
Yeah, Thursday was opening night. Friday was opening night for the Eagles, and then the Flyers were in town on Saturday, so we stuck around to see a second NHL game. But even up at the Eagles, I mean, the arena was loud. The PA system and stuff was loud, and the announcers were energetic, and they got the crowd going, and they had a lot of crowd interaction things where they do. We do some of these, the what they do, the karaoke thing and stuff like that. Some of those like little fan engagement kinds of things. But man, I got to tell you, like, you go to an NHL game or an AHL game, and it's on a whole nother level.
You need more of that's one of the things that we've debated for a long time with UNO hockey, is atmosphere or lack thereof. And during the years downtown at the CenturyLink Center, the thought was, well, if you get them in a smaller, intimate arena again, like they had at the Civic, then the atmosphere is going to improve. Well, that obviously, has kind of been hit or miss at Baxter Arena. There have been some big games where it's gotten loud, but the big thing is trying to sort of stimulate participation with the fans in that arena.
Right.
And that goes to some of the graphics that you show on the board. It goes to what the PA announcer does. There are things that you can do with music, the band, etc., that really get the fans into the game. And I just don't think that they're doing them. I sometimes think that they just kind of sort of rest on kind of doing what we've always done with some of those traditions. And I'm with you. It is kind of a lackadaisical environment, for want of a better
and it's hard because I don't know. We talked about when we talked about players and stuff. Is it just because it's a preseason game, or is this an ongoing thing with any one player or something? And I don't know if it's just because it's a preseason game and there weren't a ton of people there.
Right. It was
but
early.
I'd say even last year, I'd say like
there were
just simple solution: crank the volume on the PA system. Like make it nice and loud and get people, because I think that just gets your. I go to the As games and you walk in from the very get-go. They've got music playing during warm-ups and stuff, and it's loud
and it's energetic music. Yes. That's the big thing. I mean, I can honestly tell you, having sat there tonight, I really don't remember any of the music that was played during the game. I mean, other than the little Unleash the Fury bit that they do before the third period, I did not. You know what I'm saying? There wasn't a lot of that going on. Now, maybe that's because they're not in mid-season form, but like you said, it is, and you do feel like if they made it a more fun, exciting environment.
Yeah. Well, and hopefully later on in the year, hopefully not even later on in the year. I mean, we got Notre Dame as the next home series, so I think if we get some more students there, get them engaged and jumping around and energetic and going, hopefully that energy funnels to the rest of the arena.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think it'd be really cool if we just over time kind of introduced and worked in some new chants. I know that some people might not want to do that, but I think it'd be kind of interesting to kind of, maybe
have the chance on the board, know, for those people that maybe haven't been to a lot of games, or maybe this is their first game and they don't know some of these.
Because a lot of times you'll hear some of these chants in various parts of the arena, and so people can't make it out, or they just don't, they're not motivated to participate. But you're right. If you have it up on the board,
why are they talking about microwaving a cat?
They'll do it. And speaking of, Colorado-based teams,
okay.
you can meow zap pop and microwave the cat, which is it's a good cheer, and people would like to participate with that, but they don't know what it is, and that's the way I think it was. It's kind of like you and I both like the Denver Broncos. I mean, the incomplete thing. I mean, the whole stadium does that, and I believe that was something that they had put up years ago on the video board.
Stuff. On the banner video boards.
Exactly, and so I mean, I'd like to see more of that too, and I think there's a lot that could be done, and I really think it's just getting everybody, the students, the Red Army, and the video guy on the boards, getting all of that coordinated so that it looks like we're all doing this together as an arena, so that people join in on that stuff. And it becomes a lot more fun.
And I remember going to even like Rockies games, and they'd have first versus third and the baselines, and it would be, one side yells and the other side yells.
Absolutely,
and it's like this like fun competition between the arena. Like you could have a bench side versus home side versus visitor side in ours.
And this is not the days when you have like a static kind of analog, board. There is an actual beautiful, there's this beautiful video board.
Oh, that can do.
Yeah. I think they ought to. Yeah, I absolutely. I'm with you. It was also kind of warm in there tonight. I know that's, but it was. I was like, normally I need a jacket in here, but it was a little. It was a little warm, so that might have kind of lulled people to sleep. And it obviously didn't help being the fact that there weren't that many people there. But yeah, I'm kind of with you on that. I would like to have something where I just feel like pumped up and energetic and excited. Yeah,
adrenaline flowing.
Exactly.
It'd be fun.
Yeah, so that I'm not tempted to just sit there and flick through Twitter the whole during all the breaks and play.
Yeah, it is pretty comical the minute the puck stops and the whistle blows, and then people
people like looking at their screens. So maybe
what's really great is I love this is the whistle will blow, and I see all these people sitting around us that look down to their phones, and then you hear the whistle go a couple times, and they look up like, wait, why are they still blowing the whistle? It's like, because there's two guys like literally pushing each other,
exactly,
on the verge of fighting, and you totally missed it.
It is. It's really killed atmosphere having those devices. So we. As much as you and I love them.
Yes. So, all right. So anything else we need to talk about before we sign off?
I think it was fun to get to see the team out there, kind of work out some of the rust, work out some of the kinks. And it'll be very interesting to see how they do this upcoming weekend at Union College.
Go on the road. Could be good for the team. A chance to kind of gel when you're on the road. There's pretty much nothing but teammates. So you've got team dinners, team lunches, you eat together, you've got your roommates you see all the time, so you can really kind of start to A lot of times, I know a lot of coaches will put
it's a good
center
opportunity
in the
for them to
line
bond
or-
when you go on those road trips together. Absolutely, and it'd be a good matchup against what's been a good ECAC team for UNO. So
they got a win on.
I'm very excited,
Saturday,
and then we'll be back in a couple weeks for Notre Dame, which should be awesome. So,
well, so that's all we've got for this episode of the Mavpuckcast.
Yeah. We appreciate the positive feedback and response you guys have given us, and we are going to work diligently to get as many of these out as we possibly can.
Probably not 2 a day or
not
anything
not
like
twice
that.
a week, or every single day. I'll be moving into Jason's spare room. So it's we will do.
But you never know. We set up a Patreon page and the few
knows?
listeners we have, you guys all shell in a couple grand, and maybe we can start doing something.
Yes,
on that.
So we would love to do this full time. So all the positive feedback, all the listens are really appreciated. So thank you guys so much.
Definitely move us closer to that. So thank you all for listening, and we'll see you next time.
Absolutely.